It was a sunny Saturday morning when I clipped the leash onto Max, my golden retriever, and stepped outside. Max wasn't just my dog. He was my trained service animal, certified to help me with my anxiety disorder. He always wore his vest proudly, and everyone in the neighborhood adored him, except for one person. Karen, my next-door neighbor. Karen had made it her personal mission to scrutinize everything I did. From the color of my fence to the length of my grass, she always had something to complain about. But her latest target was Max. That morning, as I walked Max down the sidewalk, Karen stormed out of her yard, arms crossed, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Excuse me," she snapped, blocking my path. "That dog of yours is dangerous. He barks, he sheds, and he doesn't belong in this neighborhood." I took a deep breath, keeping my calm as Max gently pressed against my leg, sensing my tension. "Karen, Max is a service animal. He's trained, certified, and protected by law," I explained. Karen scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Service animal, please. That's just a pet in a vest. I've already reported you to the Homeowners Association, and if they don't handle it, I will." True to her word, the very next day, a letter from the HOA arrived in my mailbox. It stated that there had been a formal complaint regarding an unregistered, dangerous animal on the premises. They demanded proof of Max's legitimacy. I felt my chest tighten with stress. Max had never hurt anyone. In fact, he'd saved me from countless panic attacks. Yet now, thanks to Karen, his very presence in my life was being questioned. 2 days later, I heard sirens in the distance. I thought it was a coincidence, until I saw a police cruiser pull up in front of my house. Karen was standing on her porch, arms raised like she had just accomplished some heroic act. "There! That's him! The dog is dangerous!" she shouted as the officer stepped out. The officer approached me, stern but calm. "Sir, we've received a complaint. We'll need to verify some details about your dog." Max sat beside me, tail wagging, as if he sensed this was another test he had to pass. My hands shook as I handed the officer Max's service animal papers. But instead of looking at them, the officer made a quick call on his radio. Moments later, a white van with a veterinary clinic logo pulled up. Out stepped Dr. Phillips, the local vet, one who happened to specialize in service animals. Karen's triumphant smile faded as the vet walked straight toward me. "Let's see this dangerous dog of yours," Dr. Phillips said calmly, kneeling in front of Max. Dr. Phillips crouched down to Max's level, extending a gentle hand. Max sniffed it politely before sitting down, his tail sweeping the grass in slow, friendly arcs. His calm behavior spoke louder than words. Karen, however, wasn't convinced. She marched across the lawn, finger jabbing the air. "Don't let him fool you, doctor. That beast barks at all hours, and I've seen him jump on people. He's out of control." Dr. Phillips glanced up at her, unbothered. "Ma'am, I've worked with Max before. He's one of the most well-trained service animals I've ever certified." Karen froze mid-sentence. You know this dog?" I felt a rush of relief wash over me. "Yes," I explained quickly. "Dr. Phillips was the one who did Max's evaluation and paperwork. He's not just a vet. He specializes in training assessments." The officer folded his arms, clearly interested now. "So you're saying this dog is officially recognized as a service animal?" Dr. Phillips pulled a folder from his bag and flipped it open. "Correct. Here are the documents from the state registry, as well as Max's medical records and certification. Everything is up to date." Karen's jaw dropped. "That can't be real. Anyone can print out papers these days. How do we know you're not faking this together?" The vet sighed, stood up, and addressed her directly. "Ma'am, I'm licensed by the State Veterinary Board. My clinic is accredited. If you'd like, the officer here can call the board to verify my credentials. But I assure you, everything about Max is legitimate." Max, sensing the tension, leaned into me. I scratched his ear, my nerves easing slightly. But Karen wasn't finished. She stomped her foot, voice shrill. "I don't care about your so-called credentials. Service animals aren't allowed to bark. And I've heard him barking at night." The officer raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, barking is not against the law. Service dogs are allowed to express themselves, just like any other animal, as long As they're not aggressive. Karen's face turned red. This is ridiculous. That mutt doesn't belong here. I'm calling the HOA president myself. Before she could storm off, Dr. Phillips held up a hand. Actually, let's put this to rest once and for all. We'll do a simple demonstration. I'll run Max through a quick test in front of everyone. If he fails, you'll have grounds to complain. But if he passes... Karen crossed her arms tightly. Fine, but he won't pass. Just you wait. The officer nodded. That sounds fair. Let's see what this dog can do. Dr. Phillips clipped a short training leash onto Max's vest and gave me a reassuring smile. Don't worry, he's going to make you proud. My heart pounded as the small crowd gathered. The officer, Karen, a couple of neighbors who had peeked out from their porches. All eyes were on Max. All right, buddy, Dr. Phillips said softly. Show them what you're trained for. Max perked up, alert and ready. The air felt heavy with suspense. The street had gone quiet. Even the birds seemed to pause as Dr. Phillips positioned Max in the middle of the lawn. Karen tapped her foot impatiently, whispering under her breath about how stupid this all was. But the officer gave her a sharp look, silencing her. Dr. Phillips started with a calm, steady voice. Max, heel! Instantly, Max rose to his feet and walked perfectly at his side, never pulling on the leash, never straying a step too far ahead. He stopped exactly when Dr. Phillips stopped, sat when commanded, and even ignored Karen when she tried snapping her fingers to distract him. A few neighbors whispered from across the street. I caught one of them murmuring, "That's impressive." But Karen wasn't done. Big deal. Any mutt can do that. Show me something real. Dr. Phillips didn't flinch. He glanced at me. Would you be willing to demonstrate how Max assists you during an episode? My throat tightened. Anxiety wasn't something I liked to put on display, but I understood what was at stake. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I can try. I knelt down beside Max, took a few deep breaths, and let my body recall the tremors that usually came when panic set in. Max knew the signals well. My uneven breathing, the shaking in my hands. Before I could even fake the symptoms fully, he pressed his weight gently against my chest, grounding me with deep pressure therapy. His eyes locked on mine, calm and steady, as if telling me, "You're safe." The officer's eyebrows lifted. Well, I'll be... Karen scoffed. That doesn't prove anything. He's just leaning on him like any spoiled dog would. Dr. Phillips wasn't finished. He gave me a nod to continue. Try standing and walking with him. Show them the crowd assist command. I stood, and Dr. Phillips motioned for the officer and two neighbors to walk close, mimicking a tight space. The moment I felt hemmed in, my pulse quickened, and Max immediately moved between me and the group, creating a barrier. He guided me a safe step backward, then looked up at me, waiting for approval. That, Dr. Phillips said firmly, is crowd control, a service technique for people with PTSD or anxiety disorders. The neighbors clapped quietly. Even the officer cracked a smile. Karen's face was beet red now. This is all staged. You're all against me. The officer shook his head. Ma'am, I think we've seen enough. This dog is no threat. In fact, he's better trained than most dogs I've ever encountered. Karen sputtered. You can't be serious. He still barks. He still sheds. But before she could finish, another car pulled up. Not a police car this time, but a black SUV with the HOA logo on the side. Out stepped Mr. Hargrove, the HOA president, clipboard in hand. Karen's triumphant smirk returned instantly. Finally, someone with authority. You'll put an end to this nonsense. Mr. Hargrove adjusted his glasses and looked from Karen to me, then down at Max. Well, he said, it seems I've arrived at an interesting moment. Mr. Hargrove, the HOA president, stepped onto my lawn with an air of authority. He was known in the neighborhood for being strict, but fair. Karen hurried over to him, her voice shrill with excitement. Mr. Hargrove, you came just in time. This man has a dangerous, unregistered animal. I filed multiple complaints, and you need to make him get rid of that dog immediately. She pointed at Max like he was some kind of monster. Max simply wagged his tail and sat at my feet, completely unfazed. Mr. Hargrove raised an eyebrow. Is that so? He turned to the officer. What's going on here? The officer explained everything calmly, from Karen's complaint to Dr. Phillips's inspection and Max's demonstration. When he finished, Mr. Hargrove looked directly at Dr. Phillips. And you're certain this dog is a registered service animal? Dr. Phillips held up the folder once more. Certified, licensed, and trained. I personally handled his evaluation. Mr. Hargrove took the folder, glanced through the documents, and gave a small nod. Then he turned to Karen. Karen, service animals are protected under both state and federal law. Complaining about shedding and barking isn't grounds for removal. Unless this dog is disruptive or aggressive, which he clearly is not, you have no case. Karen's jaw dropped. No case? He's a nuisance. He makes me uncomfortable. That should be enough. Mr. Hargrove's voice hardened. Being uncomfortable isn't a legal reason to harass your neighbors. In fact, repeated false complaints are a violation of HOA policy. If you continue, fines will be issued. And, if necessary, legal action can be taken. A hush fell over the small crowd. The neighbors watching from their porches whispered, some even chuckling at Karen's stunned expression. Karen sputtered, her voice breaking. You can't do this to me. I have rights too. The officer stepped forward. Yes, ma'am, you do. But so does he. And right now, you're the one crossing the line. I finally spoke up, my voice steady. Karen, Max isn't here to bother anyone. He's here to help me. If you could just accept that, maybe things wouldn't have to be so difficult between us. For once, Karen had no comeback. She turned on her heel, muttering under her breath as she stormed back into her house and slammed the door. Dr. Phillips gave Max a pat on the head. He passed with flying colors. You should be proud. The officer tipped his hat. That's one impressive dog you've got there. Keep up the good work. Mr. Hargrove handed me back the folder and offered a rare smile. Case closed. And for the record, you and Max are welcome here. Relief washed over me as I looked down at Max. He gazed back with those loyal eyes, as if saying, told you I've got your back. And in that moment, surrounded by supportive neighbors, I knew one thing for certain. No amount of Karen's complaints could ever take Max away from me. Enjoying this crazy Karen showdown? Subscribe for more real-life neighbor drama and everyday stories with wild twists. If Max the service dog impressed you, hit that like button and let me know in the comments. How would you handle a neighbor like Karen?